I like Bitcoin Cash. I mean, there's no fees with it. Like the things that's about.
Dude,
Yeah.
that reminds me so much. Just the I like Bitcoin Cash. Are we back to Wall Street bets? I like the stock. Like,
True. Very true. Well, you haven't heard this before. I've heard this before,
oh,
but it's interesting. That was your first take. I like the stock. I like Bitcoin Cash. Yeah.
yeah. You can focus on all this shit, but like, I like Bitcoin Cash. Like, that's such
I-
a so simple. So yeah.
Hello and welcome back to the Bitcoin Cash podcast. Following the world on its way into hyperinflation, jokes but not actually joking, following Bitcoin Cash on its rise to global reserve currency. Today's episode, number 31, clip review of Mark Cuban and SwizzBeatz, Sunday, the 24th of October, 2021. I am your host, Jeremy, and today there is no guest. We've got Jett, as always, in the production chair, but we're also trying to live stream this episode on Twitch. I've tried and failed at this in the past, but this time I've got Jett manning the controls. So hopefully that works out and it doesn't overtax my internet. Yeah, so no guest today because I didn't want to have a guest and then have it be a disaster if we failed at streaming it. But that's an innovation that we're hopefully bringing to the show. So if you're watching live, welcome aboard. Yeah, cool. All right, so let's crack on with it then. So some podcast news for this week. So I set up Google Analytics on the bitcoincashpodcast.com site, and I've been wanting to do this for a while, but it's taken me some time to get around to it. And my reasoning is because I have a stats page there. If you go to bitcoincashpodcast.com/stats, I have a page where I've linked to a couple of other people in the BCH scene. There's the Pan Money team, BitPay, and Cash2VN.com that publish stats about their cryptocurrency usage. And I've been publishing some of the podcast stats there, the YouTube views, and also the RSS, the podcast download. So if anybody's curious how many people watch this show, well, you can check that out and find out. And so now I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to add Google Analytics stats for the actual Bitcoin Cash podcast site. And the reason that I want to do this is so that the community and the scene can have some idea of if we're growing or not, right? Because the price, while we look at it every week and whatever, and the transactions and so on, all that stuff is not, it's kind of only part of the picture, right? And Bitcoin Cash typically does terribly on price compared to all the other like coins that are getting hyped up, flavor of the week or whatever, right? So it's harder to get to the bottom of, is there actual real sustainable growth happening in our scene? And so I'm hoping that if there's more views on the podcast website, well, that would indicate more interest in this podcast, which indicates pretty strongly, I would say, more interest in Bitcoin Cash, because that's literally the only thing that it's about, and that's entirely how it's branded. So we'll see what the results of that are going to be. It's going to need to be a few weeks to see what the baseline is. I have no idea how many people have been checking out my site or not, or if it's well optimized or whatever, but hopefully that can be a bit of a talking point going forward to find out whether the scene's growing, and also to inform me, what gets measured gets managed, right? So if the views are low, or if I release a new music video or do, more regular episodes or whatever, we'll be able to see if it's having an effect, and hopefully optimize to get more and more of the world looking at this website. And so any dedicated listeners of the show as well too, definitely like write in if you've had a bit of a look at it and what you think needs upgrading and improving. I have a lot of ideas, but one thing I've been working quite seriously on has been the FAQs part of the site, and it's now actually in several categories, and there's quite a decent amount of information there, and there's a lot more FAQs that I want to write as well. But I hopefully can build up just a big, like a Wikipedia type scenario where all the information that somebody needs about Bitcoin Cash is there, in the sense that all the questions that your friends and family and whatever have over and over and over and over again, things that I've answered hundreds of times to different people on Reddit or in person, that it's just all there. So if somebody is asking you, like, what about Bitcoin Cash, what about this, what about that, what about regulations, what about other coins, blah blah blah, you can just link them to that and say, look, check this out. Here is everything you could ever possibly want to know, every question answered. So I've made a bit of a start on that, and I'll be interested if anybody comments on the Reddit threads or uses the contact info to let me know what they think of that. Right. Okay. So let's crack on then with the actual show. So the price update for this week, Bitcoin Cash, $619.61 USD. When I checked a couple hours ago, one BTC buys around 97 BCH. So BCH has actually fallen against BTC, and it was back under 100 to 1. BTC has had a huge surge up and has made it back to fresh all-time highs, right? It went over the $64,000 mark. It got up to about $66,000, I think. And there was, of course, a little, ripples of excitement. Bitcoin back at all-time highs. When is that? Not a good headline, but it didn't immediately go vertical. So there was a sort of a bit of celebrating of, the bulls all had it wrong. Bitcoin is still in a bull market. I mean, the bears all had it wrong. It's still in a bull market, and that is true, right? So I did write, and I announced on Twitter and on Noise as well. Like, I gave some props to Colin Talks Crypto, because in my Cryptocalypse episode number 24, I was sort of describing my theory of how crypto was going to sort of crash off from there. And that didn't happen. It did go back to all-time highs. So definitely I was wrong about that, and I have publicly admitted that. So no bones about that one. But his theory obviously is that the crypto will just keep rocketing up higher and higher over the next few months. And I'm still not entirely sold. Obviously I've been wrong so far, but at the same time, I think my theory still is correct, that we're not seeing a lot of groundswell of real adoption. Cryptocurrency is getting a bit of traction, but in terms of people actually using it to pay for things, we're still not seeing that. So it's not generating that big organic breakthrough moment of everybody realizing, wow, this is going to be the payments of the future. The whole global financial system is going to switch onto that. Crypto can still be, okay, maybe Bitcoin is at all-time highs and people are excited about that because they're getting rich or it makes a good headline, but I'm not seeing a mania, basically. So we'll see. Obviously it went back up to all-time highs and now it's dropped back a bit. Maybe it will go up to all-time highs again, and maybe it will keep pushing higher over the next few months. We'll wait to see. At this point, I'm happy to just let it play out without trying to make too many grand predictions. But I still don't sense a mania, basically, or anything like any of the previous Bitcoin bubbles. So personally, I don't feel very strongly that it's going to be rocketing up to 100K or to higher than that myself. It might, who knows, in crypto. Definitely I don't, but I'm not really convinced about any of that. Anyway, so then as far as the transactions go, last time we saw a bit of a bump up from 100K to about 140K, and there were sort of questions about where that was coming from. That did drop off after a couple of days, and it was confirmed by the Noise.cash team that they had moved their they had been trying some different sort of batching methods or trying some different payments, so that had led to a bit of an increase, and then they'd found that whatever they were testing didn't really work, so they stopped doing it. So it wasn't actually just a big surge in adoption, it was just Noise.cash. But still good to see that Bitcoin Cash still doing roughly 100K transactions per day, pretty non-trivial amount. And definitely within striking distance of BTC at 300,000 transactions. As far as the cent in USD, we've had Bitcoin is sort of leveled off a bit in the sense that it had that huge spike up to more than 350 billion cent for just a couple of days, but has since fallen back to the levels it was closer at before that, which is in the sort of 40 to 60 billion per day. And the same with BCH. It's been sitting pretty comfortably at the sort of 5 to 6 billion type of range. So roughly about 10%. So 100 to 1 on the price scale, roughly 3 to 1 on the transactions, and 10 to 1 on the cent in USD. So definitely some still plenty of hope there for BCH, I would say. Definitely punching above its weight relative to the price differential. So this episode, got a few different topics, but the two sort of main ones, which I'll get to towards the end, are a bit of clip reviews with SwizzBeatz and Mark Cuban also talking about BCH. So we'll get into the specifics of those, but I wanted to bring them up just before we go here onto the first slide of news, which is called ETC Group Drops Glowing BCH Report, because I think the theme for this episode and this week is that BCH's sort of narrative is kind of coming together really quite nicely. And even though, like I said, we're back down below 100 to 1, we've watched this sort of throughout the lifetime of this podcast. BCH has gone from about 80, whatever it was, 80 to 1, down to about 118 to 1, up to 35 to 1, and now it's back down, was under 100 to 1, and now has maybe started trending back up a bit, right? So there has been this kind of fluctuation in the price against BTC, but over the time span of that year, whether BCH is high or low, you have seen increasing sort of acceptance and awareness in the world in general that BCH is not going away. It's been here a long time, and it's started sorting out some of its problems, and it started making inroads. It doesn't really matter if it's lower down on the coin market cap rankings. It still gets attention. People are still always curious about what's going on here because they read into cryptocurrency and they learn about the history, and they learn about the block size wars and the fork that happened, and then all those things. It's sort of an indelible part of cryptocurrency history. If you learn anything about cryptocurrency, well, the first thing you learn is what is Bitcoin, and then you learn like what is Ethereum, and then in part of that process you will at some point come across, so why are certain things the way they are in Bitcoin, like the 1 megabyte block size limit? Why does it cost $5 to send a Bitcoin transaction? What is the point of all these other hundreds of coins? Why is Dogecoin good? Any of that stuff. And at some point, Bitcoin Cash finds its way into the story, because it is the key part of cryptocurrency history, at least according to me. But the rest of the world, they just can't ignore that, right? So anyway, first slide that we have here is ETC Group drops glowing BCH report. So this is some sort of big investment type of company. I don't really know all that much about ETC Group, but they obviously got on the radar of the BCH community this week by dropping this report called Valuing Bitcoin Cash. So they did one specifically just on Bitcoin Cash, and as far as I know, they didn't do one on other currencies. They didn't do one on Bitcoin even, or Ethereum, or maybe they did, and I just didn't see them. But as far as I know, they literally just did Bitcoin Cash. And they were basically very, very positive about it. And they talked about the history and, all this sort of information of how Bitcoin Cash came to be, what is the differences to Bitcoin, and so on and so forth. And they clearly had done their research. They didn't just do it randomly, or it wasn't just a surface level thing, because one of the things I noticed was they talked about the amount of Reddit subscribers, and they said, look, Bitcoin Cash has more than 600,000 Reddit subscribers, which is actually pretty massive compared to even some of the bigger cryptocurrencies. Definitely some of the ones that are higher on it on the coin market cap, they wouldn't have 600,000 Reddit subscribers. And I mean, even BTC only has whatever it was, 3.5 million or something like that, right? So it's 1/6 of the size, despite being at 100 to 1 price ratio. And they said that, and subtly within that is the fact that on Reddit, the actual Bitcoin Cash /r/Bitcoin Cash subreddit has way less than 600,000. I think maybe it has like 100,000 or 80,000, something like that. But the one they're talking about is /r/BTC, which is the one where a lot of the hardcore Bitcoin Cash people post and pay attention, because they ended up in that subreddit once the main Bitcoin subreddit /r/Bitcoin started censoring and banning everyone for liking the idea of raising the block size. Before Bitcoin Cash split away, but then once Bitcoin Cash split off, that sort of quickly came to dominate the discussion there, because you couldn't discuss that at /r/Bitcoin, right? Including me. I was in the group that got banned and then sort of migrated over to /r/BTC. But the point is that this report from ETC Group, they knew that, or they'd done their research in detail enough to figure out that this was where the main Bitcoin Cash discussion was going on, even though it has a very unintuitive name of /r/BTC, which is the ticker for Bitcoin BTC. So they, this was not to be taken lightly. It wasn't a surface level look. And they pointed at a couple of other things that BCH has massively going for it, like the fact that PayPal and Venmo this year adopting cryptocurrency, well, they adopted what I'm always explaining is sort of the big four of crypto, right? BTC, Ethereum, Litecoin, and Bitcoin Cash, right? And it's not an accident that these kind of companies look into it, and because they see, or they either have somebody in there who is a big Bitcoin Cash fan and who understands it, especially if they've been in crypto for a long time, they're more likely to be like that, or they just look into it and they understand, look, this has been around for a long time. This is a real community. This is not going anywhere. And in terms of real usage and not just speculative hype or mania, Bitcoin Cash is kind of a heavy hitter. And they also recognized in this report the scaling improvements, because obviously they talked about the fork and about Lightning Network and different things that BTC can't be used kind of for payments, not very conveniently, and said, look, we looked into what BCH, the devs, they've kept cracking away on the same problem. They've still been working on scaling the layer one and being able to get it to, like I say, being a global reserve currency. And those results are paying off. It's kind of invisible to the market because there's not that much demand for specifically BCH, even across the whole cryptocurrency ecosystem. There is not those massive levels of demand for transactions, especially if you filter out a lot of the DeFi stuff. If you set that aside in terms of actual retail payments or individuals trading, money between themselves without it being some kind of DeFi product, there just isn't that amount of retail need for or demand for cryptocurrency yet. But this report has figured out what people will start to figure out as they get more into retail cryptocurrency payments, which is that Bitcoin Cash has a scalable protocol that can handle hundreds of thousands, millions, and soon enough, not quite yet, but in the next coming few years, billions of users, which most protocols can't handle at that point, or at least not without being either very centralized or having very high fees or having to be very experimental. Any or all of those problems can apply to those other chains, but Bitcoin Cash does not have any of those problems, and it has the capacity. It hasn't needed it yet, but the point is that the roadmap has already been laid down, right? And as well, the sort of final point I've got here on the slide is that this same ETC group, they figured out that Bitcoin Cash was struggling because of the problems with the narrative, the problems that it has always been a sort of smaller, sort of knockoff in its branding compared to Bitcoin BTC. It's always been overshadowed, and it's always been a community that has been dominated by, what could have been, right? If we had been given the Bitcoin branding and had been able to carry forward sort of the vision with retail payments, with cheap on-chain fees, being able to scale up to more and more people, not getting bogged down in Lightning Network, all that stuff has been a huge problem for the community. And so this report does acknowledge that, and it's right, and it is a theme of this episode as well too, is going to be how can Bitcoin Cash break through despite that branding, because we can't and we shouldn't switch away from it. that's that's just conceding the Bitcoin branding is not going to help Bitcoin Cash, no matter how much the BTC side constantly want to say, yeah, well, you're just a knockoff, and if you changed, then you wouldn't be you wouldn't suffer from that. You could sort of create your own image, but there's too much value, and it's too important to the mission and to the story and to the legitimacy of Bitcoin Cash that people understand and read the history and understand, look, this came from Bitcoin and this was why this community made these choices, and that they can't be bullied around, right? They can't be pushed off the Bitcoin branding or the Bitcoin idea, no matter how many haters don't really like that. So definitely that's something that we as a community need to do everything that we can to correct for. But the way we correct it is just by educating people, by explaining all of those things. Hence why I was talking about the FAQs at the start of this episode. But that is the number one biggest problem that Bitcoin Cash has, is getting enough user education that people can see past the sort of branding conflict with BTC. So this EDC group dropped a great report. They love Bitcoin Cash, but very realistically, that was the one downside that they did find, is that people don't understand cryptocurrency, in any great detail, let alone understanding how hard forks work, how this and that, all plays into it, or what happened with BCH, which is constantly sort of marginalized and censored wherever possible. But we're going to keep fighting anyway. So that was really good to see anyway. Okay, cool. So then we have this next slide here of 11.4% of adults owning cryptocurrency globally, which is a claim that has been made in some research from CoinMarketCap, and it was highlighted on Twitter by a company called Blockworks, who I follow. And I think this makes sense. I mean, I don't know exactly, how accurate or not this is, but it does sort of make sense to me that these numbers would be about right. Whoever it is that did this research, they did a fairly thorough job. They've got a whole table of all the different countries and percentages of any crypto, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, Binance Coin, and Dogecoin, all listed out here. And essentially it comes to an average of 11.4% of people own any crypto, with 6.9% owning Bitcoin and 3.2% owning Ethereum. So that does strike me as about right. I have found particularly in the last 3 or 4 months, that talking to people just around, obviously very unscientifically, that more and more people are aware of crypto, or they own some, right? Even if they just have a little bit in a Coinbase account, or they don't know all that much about it. I was talking to somebody literally a couple of nights ago who told me he had some Ethereum and he never did anything with it. He just said, look, I just let it sit there. It's all good. I just want to, make sure that I'm a part of this. I don't have any need for it now, but it's there and I'm not going to be left out. And I think, I don't know, that sounds about right. And with 10% is a pretty critical kind of tipping point as well too, because they say, in society, like a strong 10% will tend to exert its will on the other 90%. Like if we're at 10% now who have made the active choice to join into crypto, then it's increasingly just going to become a reality for the people in the 90% that they've got to switch just not to be left behind, because that's more than a small minority. That's starting to get to be an unignorable kind of minority. So yeah,
I don't think that's right for Canada. Like, maybe
what does it say here? Is Canada on this list? 10%.
Yeah,
it says for Canada. So
I look at these other numbers where it's like 5% Bitcoin, 3% Ethereum, yada yada. Where does the overall 10% just seems wrong to me. I'd lean much more towards max that 5% that are owning Bitcoin. Maybe push it to like 7 between Bitcoin and Ethereum, but like I'd say less than 0.01% of Canadians give a shit about any of this. Like, or sorry,
really,
like, yeah, this is so so rare to me. Like, I'm also in a rural province, but like, I've gone to farmers markets. I held meetups, right? I've sponsored expos and given out cryptocurrency, and I know people that had it and then just forgot about it, and they like. There's just not enough use, and even in like the holders, like no one's like. I know one person who actively trades and has not made money on it. So if that's the
Yeah.
majority of crypto people, right, it's niche to be in this ideologically at this point. And there's only one person in my life that even bothers with that. It seems like this is
Way
given it,
optimistic.
yeah, yeah. And I'd love for it to be like, yeah, 10%. Like, where are those 10% of people? Like, I've been doing this shit for years, getting merchants onboarded and stuff. Where are these people at? Not New
Well,
Brunswick.
I don't know. Maybe it's just not in your area, but sort of the way and obviously it is. I mean, firstly, yeah, who knows how freaking accurate or not these stats are. Like, pretty much impossible to sort of tell where or how they figured out these stats, or to sort of verify them in any way. But I mean, to me, it makes sense because I could believe that 1 in 10 people had some, even if it was just that of that 10%, 80% of that 10%, so 8% overall, had just signed up to Coinbase, got 20 pounds of free crypto, and then forgotten about it.
Yeah, the $3 in their earn whatever token.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, and the reason is partly because I can see the transition in people around me that, like I was saying the other night, I was talking to somebody about crypto, in just a completely different context, and it was literally just like, yeah, I've got some, still don't really know how it works, whatever, but it's there, right?
Yeah.
And I talked to another guy actually who he worked for a cryptocurrency company, and that was also to me like, oh, right, wow, I can now just run into people around who are like, yeah, I'm working on cryptocurrency full time, right? And obviously there are a lot of those people in the world, because that's what the whole cryptocurrency industry is comprised of. But still, just to run into them randomly seems quite unlikely, or it's never happened before, really. And then even just the fact that, yeah, some of my relatives and stuff are also been getting into it. Shout out to my Aunt Mary, who recently has been getting into it a lot, and then I was showing her the ropes, or explaining it a little bit to her too as well. So I can just see these small little things coming up, although I will also put in a counterpoint that is more to your side of it, which is that on Friday I was at the React Advanced conference in London, which is obviously a pretty like techie type of crowd. And in one of the earliest talks of the day, there was one of the engineers from Facebook was there talking about scaling things. And the premise for his talk was about updating refreshing data that you were pulling from a website, on a screen, right? And doing that, with hundreds of thousands of requests and all that sort of thing. And his the sort of little joke angle in his topic was, haha, I found an actual use case for Bitcoin. And he was pulling data from the Coinbase API to show this refreshing data. But what got me was the fact that he brought up Bitcoin in the first place. He could have used anything as an example. There's plenty of sites you can pull data from. He just chose Coinbase. But B, he misspelled Bitcoin on his slide. He had Bitcoin with BIT and then the capital COIN. And I've not seen that in actually quite a long time, right? If you rewind back 5 years ago, definitely 6 to 8 years ago, you would see that all over the place. People with a capital C in Bitcoin, or the whole thing in caps, or like not really sure it was it a capital B or a small case B, or just with a dash coin, like all this stuff, right? I haven't been seeing that as much, but this one guy was still out of the loop and still had it spelled wrong. So I was like, well, there you go.
Hold on, did he ever write down a ticker in the slides or any of that?
Where he had because he was pulling data from the BTC-USD
Okay.
feeds and the BTC-Euro feeds.
I was gonna say, like, I see that in the BSV crowd, they still do Bitcoin with the capital C.
Do they? Okay.
Yeah, it's something to fucking. I don't want to get into it, but yeah, it's frequent. Yeah. Cult shit,
okay,
you know.
all right. Yeah, well, but anyway, the point was just that, and that kind of that small thing, just I was honestly, I felt like it was a bit of an unaware move by this guy in his talk to begin with, because he trying to make that kind of a joke, like, haha, Bitcoin, it's still kind of useless, right? Like, firstly, he was talking to a very technical crowd, so there would have been a decent percentage of the people there who own, like we're saying, who knows what the percentage actually is, but there would be at least some minority of his audience that had some and were like, no, this is the future.
Yeah.
That weren't thinking, haha, it's so useless. But even like it was just such a clangor to me, because it was the exact kind of jokes you would hear like 6 years ago. It would be like, haha, Bitcoin, it's this niche thing. You can buy like one thing with it online on this store. Like, have you heard about Bitcoin? Haha. Well, I'm going to use it as this example, or something. It was that exact thing. But the world has moved on, has moved way past that. But this one engineer at Facebook apparently still hadn't got the message. I don't know. On these stats, though, I wanted to point out that who knows whether or not these stats are accurate, like we said, but the top country that they found was Nigeria, with 24% of adults owning cryptocurrency, which does make sense because Nigeria does have the highest search traffic for Bitcoin and for cryptocurrencies of anywhere in the world on Google search. I've talked about Nigeria on the show before. The government banned cryptocurrency, which in Nigeria means like green light to everybody to jump on board with cryptocurrency. Australia comes in third at 17.7%. So again, that also was matching up with my experience, in the sense that Townsville in Australia, the Bitcoin Cash city, it's a strong base for cryptocurrency and for Bitcoin Cash, and my relatives getting involved. I obviously noticed that more prominently myself, so that made sense. And also in this top list, you also had, so Nigeria's number 1, then Malaysia, then Australia at number 3, then Indonesia. Hong Kong is number 5, and at number 8 you have the Philippines. And all of these are countries where Bitcoin Cash has been doing good work. In Nigeria, there's the BCH Nigeria adoption efforts. In Australia, there's Townsville. In the Philippines, there's a lot of the Read.cash and Noise.cash crowd are heavily concentrated there. And in Hong Kong, you have the Riva Asia team doing a lot of good work. So all of this just made a lot of sense to me, that crypto adoption is obviously on the rise, that there's a not insignificant minority of people that own it. And it, was sort of self-confirming that the countries where BCH is strong are heavily represented on this list, even though they didn't, distinguish. They didn't put a column for Bitcoin Cash, which would have been amazing. But it's possible even that they, had people marking themselves down as I own Bitcoin who own Bitcoin Cash, or maybe, some people own both. I don't know, but I definitely did feel like these stats are probably not way too unreasonable. I don't know. That's it, I guess. People can make of that what they will, but the point is that it is coming, and it's very rapidly becoming a undeniable like minority who've bought in literally to the idea, to a strong extent. Cool. So then essentially, I was going to take a look at these two influencers, I guess, from the last week and a half, who have come out and been talking about Bitcoin Cash, showing that it is getting onto people's radars and it is still part of the conversation. So the first one is SwizzBeatz, who is a hip hop record producer, actually quite a famous one. although I had never heard of him before. He's married to Alicia Keys, who I have heard of.
I didn't know that.
I mean,
What the fuck?
yeah, exactly.
I've never heard of this dude before.
Yeah, well, I guess he's just kind of quietly behind the scenes, except maybe not so quiet because he has 2.4 million Twitter followers. I forgot to write Twitter followers on the slide. Anyway, he's a very big fan of Bitcoin Cash. So we've got a little segment here from him.
Swizz, what is your, because you've always been ahead of the game. You camel racing. It's always been like cars, all this different. What is your and Harvard Business School? What is your take on this crypto life?
I'm a very, very happy guy in the crypto space right now. Very, very happy. Very happy guy.
Were you early like Nas? Because I know Nas was super early.
Well, in Bitcoin Cash, I was definitely early. See, Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash are two different ones. Bitcoin is, is Bitcoin, but Bitcoin Cash is the legitimate brother to Bitcoin. I could do a whole thing on it, but I'm not going to do a whole thing on it.
Don't do a whole thing, but I'm really curious because you're smart and we trust you. And so I was curious about, because I feel like I was late and now I'm almost like, is it too late? I don't know if it's too late. And I don't really understand the world that much. And I know a lot of people have been talking about it. Dogecoin was trending for like 2 days in a row the other day.
I like Dogecoin. Everybody can do whatever they want to do. I'm only touching Bitcoin Cash. That's it. That's my whole thing. I'm not, like the key is to like learn about whatever crypto you want to be with, although there's a lot of options, and zoom in on it and make something masterful from it. So I can spread money all over the place. Like it's that's what everybody's doing, but like I just choose not to do that. I like Bitcoin Cash. I mean, there's no fees with it. Like the things that's about.
Sorry, I just gotta pause it for a second, dude.
Yeah,
that reminds me so much. Just I like Bitcoin Cash. Are we back to Wall Street bets? I like the stock. Like,
true, very true. Well, you haven't heard this before. I've heard this before. But it's interesting. That was your first take. I like the stock. I like Bitcoin Cash.
Yeah. You can focus on all this shit, but like, I like Bitcoin Cash. Like, that's such so simple. So yeah.
Well, I mean, it is, and it does come to the heart of kind of what I was talking about earlier in the episode. The idea that the Bitcoin Cash scene, the reason it has staying power is because people will not move off it. That was the whole Wall Street stocks thing. In fact, that would have been that was the second episode of this show, right? That you were on as a guest. We talked about.
I don't know if it was the second, but it was one of the early ones. Yeah.
It was that second episode. We talked about the Wall Street bet stuff. So I guess listeners of the show can, if you haven't heard that second episode, you can rewind in time and listen to that episode and get some context. But it's funny how you bring it up now. You're right. It's coming full circle, and that was the whole point of the "we like the stock" meme from those AMC and AMC recently went to the moon, by the way, but GME, we like the stock. The whole point was that there was two things about it. One thing was it was sort of that idea of the diamond hands, and it was like we're trying to go against hedge funds or whatever that can manipulate the stock price, so we need to just be blocking out any contradictory information, like almost irrationally. Just it works if everybody piles in on this one thing and nobody breaks. If everybody just does it, then that was it. And the other reason that it was a bit of a joke was because of financial regulations. That you can't say, I'm not a financial advisor, blah 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 blah. So it sort of had to be like, oh, this is not based on research or based. It was just sort of like a disclaimer, like, no, I just really like this stock. So there's no agenda. There's no. We're not doing manipulation on Reddit, so you can't sue us all. Instead, it was we just happen to we just happen to like this very, very particular stock.
If I mean, this is out of line for me, but I hope you'll appreciate what I'm going for here. If Swizz, you want to come on this podcast and tell the audience how you got involved in cryptocurrency and why you like the coin, I think that'd be amazing.
Yeah, well, definitely we can add him on Twitter when we release this this segment and see. I mean, Minnow's out there. I did add him when after I saw this clip, and I put a link to it, you know, for people on who are following me to check it out and have a listen. And I'll point out what I said after we hear the next segment where he says. He makes some comments about that. So yeah, you ready to crack on with it?
Yeah, let me mute myself again. I'm so excited about this, man. You were right.
It's pretty hype. It's definitely pretty hype.
All right, playing again now.
What to happen with it is just going to be super amazing, and no disrespect to any other crypto, but Bitcoin Cash is the only thing I'm talking about or looking at. Everybody else can have everything else. I'm cool.
Have you been like seriously educated in the space?
Very educated in the space from the best. Like, it's not just like talking to people just because of what they're seeing online. It's actually talking to people that has something to do with it, you know, from 10 years ago, you know, and really just understanding what we're doing instead of just saying we're doing it because we're seeing people make money from it. You know, it's just like the NFTs and all of those different things. Like, I hear the words, but it's like, do we truly understand how to maximize from it?
I think you should do you, Nas, maybe Meek. I don't know, whoever else is. I'm not sure who else are the other artists or folks that are heavily involved in that. But you definitely should do like a class or a course or a conversation about it. Put people on in some game.
I got a video I could put up that I'm gonna put up that's just going to explain it. It's very simple. It's very simple when you speak in English. It's not simple when you speak in crypto language and different languages, but like, let's speak to our people in a language where we can understand. And so there's definitely a video that I'm thinking about putting up that can show people the easy steps that we can understand and don't have to be a master to understand 1 + 1 = 2, not 17. The key thing.
All right, pause there for a second. So yeah, like what I said on Twitter when I commented on this was, I said, look, he says, yeah, look, I've been talking to people that have been in this for 10 years, you know, and that's a pretty big claim. Like we've had people on this show, you know, from that long ago, but 10 years. So that means 2011, you know, 2010 or 2009, right? And the number of 2009 Bitcoin adopters is like less than you know, in the hundreds, right? And most of them were very early devs, basically. 2010, you know, there's a few there around, but they're pretty rare. And 2011, still very, very, very rare. That was like the early days of crypto having a market price at all. So, you know, I mean, he might just be exaggerating a little bit. He might be saying, you know, 10 years just mean like a decade, you know, it's a convenient amount of time. It just means a long time. But I believe him that it was somebody probably, you know, from 2010 or from 2011. I saw somebody commented on one of the threads or something, said maybe that he's a friends with Kim.com somehow, who has also recently been coming out, well, not recently, but you know, in the last year and a bit, has been really backing Bitcoin Cash and has been in crypto that long as well too. So that could be the connection there. But the point is that he says, look, I talked to some of the very early people, and that makes perfect sense, because what he's saying here sounds exactly like somebody who would be from that era, right? Like Roger Ver is obviously the most prominent example, but even people that I've had on this show, right? Like Marcelo from Argentina and Cheap Lightning, that we had a couple episodes back. They have that same attitude that, look, we're actually bringing a fundamental change to human society here, and you need to not think about it in terms of speculating on what is the coin to get rich. You know, and those kind of aspects to it and thinking in the big picture. This SwizzBeatz, like he's made his money, right? He's in no rush. He doesn't need to be 5xing his money, tomorrow. I'm sure he's very, very comfortable, right? So for him, it makes sense that he could think about it a little more in detail and understand the big picture of this is going to take over society. And it also makes sense that he's got mass appeal, right? He's used to producing music that goes out to large audiences. So he knows that something needs to be simple, it needs to get the point across quickly. And he's sort of identified that Bitcoin Cash has that problem. He's trying to explain what is the difference between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. And he's also trying to demystify all the lingo that goes into cryptocurrency, which it does. It has a lot of lingo, some of it partly inherited from the finance world and some of it coming from, investing and trading sort of stuff. Some of it comes in from computer science. A lot of it is new in just cryptocurrency itself, like blockchains and like proof of work and proof of stake and hodling and all these kind of things that came with it too, right? So
is DeFi a new thing? Like I understand
DeFi.
Like the mainstream DeFi is obvious. Yeah, DeFi is like obviously new, but like what was the very first DeFi application? And I feel like it's more traceable to like, I don't know, video game currencies and the black markets for those video game currencies and people trading accounts and stuff. And sorry for that tangent, but like definitely got the noggin jogging.
Yeah, got the noggin jogging. Yeah, well, with DeFi in particular, I think that has only really become a term in the last, year and a half.
Yeah.
Well, maybe a little bit longer, maybe like, 2.5 years, right? Because it was sort of with the rise of Ethereum that Ethereum fans of the Ethereum community, they needed a way, because I had never heard of DeFi when I sort of dropped off the scene at the end of 2017. And then it seems like about 2019, 2020, that really got rolling. And it was really just that the Ethereum community needed some way to brand and label things that was like, we're doing things with cryptocurrency that are not Bitcoin and not a payment system.
Yeah.
So this is sort of what they ended up coming with. And I mean, obviously it's stuck, it's short, it's catchy, it's to the point. DeFi, decentralized finance, makes sense. It's obviously the opposite of CeFi, right? Centralized finance, or people, I guess,
well,
sometimes
the name
also
is,
even say
contracts
TradFi. Yeah. Actually, how true that is, it varies from contract to contract. But as a branding effort, a smash hit, right?
Yeah.
And so that's true. But it just, and NFTs, right? All this stuff, like there's a lot of acronyms and shortenings and just fresh words that nobody understands, which adds on to a lot of the confusion anyway when people don't really understand money to begin with. If you talk to them about fractional reserve lending or about, even for most people, like stocks and interest rates, bond yields, like even that is already like too far, into the weeds. For people that are just trying to, buy their groceries and, go to the movies and have a nice life, right? Like people know about, okay, you've got to work and save your money and have a bank account, but not everybody's going to be an expert on finance. And it seems very intimidating to people, very understandably. And now crypto has kind of cuts both ways. On one hand, it's made it a lot more, it's even more intimidating because it has more, mystique and more lingo and everything. But on the other hand, it does also have an element that it's less intimidating because, like Dogecoin, even got mentioned here on the Angie Martinez show, just because people can get that. There's something a bit more mainstream and a bit more appealing and a bit more internet culture to it that does help people to think, I need to look into this, and maybe it's not, maybe it's not some impenetrable mess that I can't understand. I've just got to take it a little bit at a time, right? So I don't know. That's it. But the point is, Swizz has been talking to some 10-year OGs, and I believe him, and he sounds like it. And it links back to what I said on the episode about Nicki Minaj 2 episodes back, that if you can get one person who has the big voice, the idea, that's worth getting 1 million people the idea. or 10 million people the idea. Because if they start explaining that with the huge reach and platform that they already have, then the word gets out there, right?
Yeah.
And so this is just absolutely massive for BCH. And I hope he does follow up with any, video or content or whatever, because he's got it. I'm sure he's got it, and it's great to see, right?
Is there any more of this video, or are we going back to the slides?
Yeah, let's watch I think there's a little bit more. They talk a little bit more about crypto, but we'll just do one more little segment, then we'll move on.
All right. Play.
Patience, right? Having patience, because it's gonna go up, down, up, down, up, down. Like you can't look at it as a hustle, right? Like a lot of people in our community, we come from the hustle, so
yes,
we looking at things as a hustle. And why this shouldn't be a hustle? This should be like a real thing, a real investment. Yes, a real commitment, not a hustle.
right.
And so look, they call me about the cryptocurrency now. You see this?
Maybe you're saying too much, Swizzy. Maybe you're saying too much.
I don't mind sharing the information, but the key thing is have a plan. Like I have like a 2 to 3 year plan of what I want to do, But today I could pull out a lot of money and be like, hey, I did the crypto thing, but you got to have patience. You have to have a roadmap. You have to have a plan and actually not follow the trend. You usually don't want to follow the trend. You got to say, okay, what is everybody not going to do? Everyone is not going to do this. Everybody's going, because what happened in Bitcoin, everybody cashed out when it went 100 times. Now it's at 54,000. Those people, imagine, you cashed out way too early. You cashed out in the hundreds. Yeah. It's at 54,000, 58,000. You could you're never going to sleep. Yeah. So you have to have patience with it and let it mature. And the same things with NFTs. We have to let it mature so we actually understand what it is to actually come up with the right strategy to implement what works for you, because the way I do crypto might not work for you. The way everybody got a different style and need of what they want. The stuff that I put in crypto, I don't plan on touching for 3 years.
Yeah, some people might need that quick bread though. Some people might be like, "Oh, I'm out."
Yeah, they got to play. They got to play a different game. It's different. It's different games but you have to know the overall business to pick which part of the game that you want to play, and I think that's what's important.
Yeah.
You've always been like that, though. You always I feel like you always looking at the game like, what's everybody not doing?
So, yeah, like what he's kind of saying as well, it just kind of wraps up in a nice, final little segment there that he's talking about, basically about volatility and about thinking in the long term, and he's making that argument for Bitcoin Cash that comes from a place of, you've got to understand, we're going to number one. Everyone in the world is going to be trading this. It's not about, oh, Bitcoin was hype and that's great and I made some money and I cashed out or anything like that. He obviously, if he has been talking again to those very early adopters who told him, look, it was at $1 and it went to $500 and then I sold half of it and now it's at $50,000, and he's seeing that same progression in Bitcoin Cash, right? That it is $500 now, so it could go to $50,000, and I mean the reality will be that it'll go far beyond that, right? In terms of sucking up more and more of the kind of world economy as people learn to start trading it peer to peer. But I don't know, this whole segment, I just thought it was absolutely fantastic, and I thought he was bringing that exact sort of BCH maximalism that I was talking about on the last episode too. He's like, look, there's a lot of cryptocurrencies out there. People can do whatever works for them, but the main game is Bitcoin Cash, and that's what I'm here for, and that's what's going to change the world, right? Since the early days and into the future, and that's how I sort of try and approach it. I'm very glad we have a diverse and vibrant cryptocurrency industry, and there's all kinds of projects and DeFi and different stuff going on, but the core of it is peer-to-peer electronic cash, because it doesn't matter about your smart contract if you can't smart contract for something that's not worth anything, right? And as well with your NFTs, they've only got value as long as you have a secure blockchain, and your secure blockchain comes from people, you know, buying up and trading the actual tokens that reward the miners and, or, you know, sort out your proof of stake or whatever. So that that was just really, this whole clip is just amazing to see. And there's just every aspect about this just shows that BCH is hitting it out of the park. Despite its, you know, pitfalls and problems with the branding, it's getting a couple key voices on side who are big names, who are really putting out the word and who understand the broad vision. So that was SwizzBeatz. I misspelled it on the slide. It has a Z at the end as well too. Did I misspell it in the title as well? Yeah, I did. Damn. Sorry, Swizz. Haven't got the grammar perfect. But yeah.
I guess he's not coming on the show now.
That's it. We're finished. Didn't do our research. Gosh. Yeah, that big oversight there. But anyway, Swizz, if you watch this, man, love it. Absolutely great advocacy and clearly thinking in the long term, you know, thinking big picture. Love to see it. Right, cool. So then the other person I wanted to talk about this week and have a look at some of their material and what they've been talking about Bitcoin Cash recently as well is Mark Cuban. So Mark Cuban is a multi-billionaire. I'm pretty sure he's in the multi-billions rather than just 1 billion. But he is a very prominent investor. He's very well known for two things. One is that he's one of the sharks on Shark Tank, the you know, investing show in America, the sort of entrepreneurial startup show. Great show. I highly recommend everybody go and watch Shark Tank if they haven't, especially some of the earlier seasons. I got really into it actually when it was very new, when there was only 1 or 2 seasons of it. This would be more than like, you know, years ago, more than 5 years at least, might be like 10 years ago. But Mark was not on the first season, but I think it was in the second season. He joined as one of the more regular hosts and, you know, investing in people's startups and stuff like that. And he, you know, has been, well, I guess not the host, but one of the sharks, and you know, has been very popular. So he's very, very well known for that. And he's also very, very well known for being the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, who are one of the teams in the NBA basketball league in America. And, you know, I guess that's a good combo, right? Because he has this sort of charismatic side of being into sports and all that. And then the sort of the more like serious business side. And they do sort of combine together, where he will, you know, give examples of how business should be conducted, or how, you know, things happen in the marketplace and whatever, with, you know, using his own basketball team as an actual example of, this is, you know, how we sold this to the fans, or this is why we're taking this commercial strategy, or that's what, you know, certain types of products that he likes, or whatever. So he's a huge name and very well known. And some way or another, he got invited onto this kind of call to debate this on this show, Smart People Shit by Dennis Porter. And they've titled it Mark Cuban versus Bitcoin, which is actually a pretty accurate summary of it, in the sense that it is him and he's debating with about 4 or 5 people who were all very big in the BTC scene. So I can't even remember what was the names of all of them, but Peter McCormack is in there, who's one. They had Lynn Alden on very briefly, although she doesn't actually say very much. And a couple of other people, right? And so it is sort of a bit of they've ganged up on him a bit. It is just him trying to argue against several of them, but he is such a big personality and he's a very outspoken kind of guy. So there was no problem with him like feeling the peer pressure or anything. So I recommend everyone go and listen to the whole thing. You can just Google Mark Cuban versus Bitcoin or whatever. But I've got a bit of a summary here that I'm just gonna walk through. We'll check out one specific clip, but the whole thing was, let's see, it was 1 hour and 40 minutes. So we're not going to get into the details of every little bit of it, but the summary was that he kind of started out and Mark said, look, I don't really like gold. He said people who like gold have kind of missed the point. So he's a bit sort of like the anti-Peter Schiff in that sense, where he's kind of like, look, gold made sense once upon a time, but we're in an internet era. He made a lot of money running his own, you know, internet and tech-based companies. So he understands completely that, you know, gold is basically just irrelevant, especially in a world where you have cryptocurrency. so he sort of calls out gold and saying, look, nobody's taking physical delivery of gold, and they just have gold for store of value. Then all the maxis kind of tell him, yeah, we hate gold too, but Bitcoin is this amazing store of value because it fixes all the problems with gold. And he kind of says, well, yeah, sort of. And then they he says, look, but I like other cryptocurrencies as well. He says he likes Dogecoin, same reason I like Dogecoin, which is that it gets people involved. People can try it out. It's approachable and it's fun. Then the Bitcoiners kind of call him a scammer because, in their delusional worldview, anybody who promotes anything that is not Bitcoin and exactly and only Bitcoin is a scammer. And they kind of get into this debate, which is about medium of exchange versus store of value. So the Bitcoin BTC side have spent the last several years selling this story that it's about being a store of value. Money has three functions: store of value, medium of exchange, unit of account, and store of value is the first and most important. Why? Because gold is like that, and they want to be like the digital gold. And it sort of plays into, well, you can protect your wealth from inflation. That's why I made that joke about hyperinflation at the start of the episode. By storing your value in Bitcoin, and it's this immutable thing, right? And what we're going to see in this clip, we're going to look at in a second, is that Mark is kind of coming at it from the other point of view, which is much, much more the BCH point of view, which is that store of value is important. It's important to be able to hold wealth in your assets. But for cryptocurrencies in particular, the reason for that value, the reason a cryptocurrency can store value is because it's a fantastic medium of exchange. And the fact that you can send it around everywhere and it's cheap and fast and quick and easy to use is what makes it valuable. And then so it goes medium of exchange, then store of value, then unit of account. Whereas the BTC maxis, it's more the opposite, where they think it's store of value, then medium of exchange, then unit of account. This is a very subtle and very important difference. So Mark gets into it in great detail with them about this distinction. So let's just have a bit of a listen to the clip where they're kind of getting onto this topic.
So I just think to try and say it's one or the other is misleading, because Bitcoin is unique in that it can actually be both.
Well, first of all, it's not unique in that. And when you compare it only to fiat, it's really, really easy. Just like when competitive blockchains only compare themselves to Ethereum, it's really, really easy. Oh my God, compared to Ethereum, it's faster, more transactions per second. You're not in a vacuum.
Mark,
so
do you know why people care what you think?
Well, wait, no, let's go back. You're changing subject.
Sorry, finish.
Let's go back and have a discussion on this, right? Bitcoin is not alone in doing this, right? So there's a variety of ways. You can go to a Mavs game and you BitPay, you can use a credit card. There's different alternatives that if you want to use direct pay, you can have far lower transaction costs. It happens instantaneously, all that stuff. That's not unique to Bitcoin.
It is to El Salvador.
It is in El Salvador.
Yeah, so I'm just giving you a perfect example. I'm giving you an actual example.
That's great, but let's go to the Bahamas and look at Bitcoin Cash. It's been there for how long?
But there's no need to compare it to Bitcoin Cash because Bitcoin Cash has no network effect. Nobody cares about it. So I'm just telling you.
So you're hoping that Bitcoin has a better network effect than El Salvador. You're hoping.
No, it has that network effect because I used it. Every retail environment I went into after September the 7th accepted Bitcoin. I went to Starbucks, went to McDonald's, went everywhere, and they accepted it.
And there's a lot of places that accept. AMC Theaters accepts Dogecoin. It doesn't make it a network effect.
No, you've missed the point. Sorry, Mark. Sorry, you're missing the point here. What I'm saying is, what Bukady has done is he's bootstrapped a whole country so everyone accepts it. So it now works there. So I'm just telling you, when you say it's a store of value and not a medium of exchange, I'm telling you it's both.
What I'm telling you is, as long as, so a lot of things can have multiple features. I'll go back to gold. It can be used for industry. It can be used for jewelry. It can be used for a lot of things. The question becomes, what is its primary utilization? Bitcoin, without question, primary is store of value. Now, I understand that the Lightning Network creates new opportunity El Salvador, it is now required that they take Bitcoin in transactions. That's great. Now, they thought it was going to be the difference in the Bahamas for Bitcoin Cash. As you said, it didn't have the network effect. We'll see what happens in El Salvador. We'll see how it plays out.
Well, we'll see.
It's not a network effect yet because there's demonstrations in the streets and there's a lot of people who don't.
Okay,
And
let me just answer that point because I was at the demonstrations and I went to 3
All right, let's pause
demonstrations
it
and
there.
each one there was less than 5.
So, I mean, there's sort of a lot to unpack, but the summary of it is that, you know, Mark is right. You know, he's trying, but he's finding that he's talking to a bit of a brick wall, which is that Peter McCormack has his narrative that he's built up to himself in his head that Bitcoin is this huge store of value and it's all good, but then the Lightning Network is going to be this savior, which is going to rush in and make it usable as a medium of exchange, and then everybody will sort of flood into it, right? And that's like complete horseshit, right? It's not that there's nothing going on there. There's sort of some semblance of an idea, but he's way oversold himself on what's happening. And so he went to El Salvador and he paid it for a Starbucks coffee and he bought something at McDonald's. That's great. But the truth of the matter is that Mark Falzone, who I brought up in a segment on the show a couple of weeks ago, he also went to El Salvador and he found, look, there was people protesting against Bitcoin and there was, you know, problems with the rollout. So maybe at this one cafe that Peter McCormack likes, he can pay with Bitcoin. That's great. But he's paying on the Lightning Network with the sort of Chivo wallet or, you know, centralized setups that they have there. It's not a groundswell of the people voluntarily choosing we want to trade this exact commodity. And so Mark is trying to get him to see the opposite point to that, which is obviously Mark, who is not as much deep in the echo chamber, did see some of this information about there was protests and there was problems in the El Salvador rollout. And he also intuitively understands that you cannot dictate these kind of things. He, like he said at the Mavs games, where look, people can pay in Dogecoin and people can pay in Bitcoin Cash and, you know, people can use their American Express card. He knows that there's no rules or top-down control that can force the population, you know, to behave in a certain way in a free market. And so undoubtedly in a free market, it's up to the people to choose, you know, what their consumer preference is. And a lot more of the talk, if you listen to the rest of it, is Mark trying to explain to the Bitcoiners that consumer preferences is what's going to drive the market. It's not going to be, you know, who has the flashiest tech or the coolest brand name or who has, you know, approval by one government or another government. That really, at the end of the day, the people are basically just going to vote because they don't care about all that stuff behind the scenes. They care about, you know, what is cheap or easy to use or just what catches their imagination, right? And that you cannot force that. And BTC is in quite a precarious position now, and you can almost feel the tension and the struggle building up for them, because you have like in this clip of Mark Cuban arguing with these Bitcoiners, they're not even really processing what he's saying, because he's coming at them from outside of their bubble and their little pre-agreed reality that Bitcoin is the truth and everything else is a scam. But outside their bubble, 99.5% of the world doesn't care about any of that. They care about what can I actually use to pay with and what makes sense. What will people actually use? And very few people will use Bitcoin. It has had its window from 2017 until now to take off, to capture the public imagination and to establish itself as the dominant currency for payments. But it hasn't done that. And the reason it hasn't done that is because the BTC side deliberately derailed themselves into all this Lightning Network and all this other like stuff. And so that's left the door open for other currencies. And Mark understands that. And he knows that 99% of people are not paying with cryptocurrency every day yet. So they are still sort of undecided, and they're the overwhelming majority of the market. And so he can also tell that medium of exchange is what matters, not the store of value stuff. or at the very least, he's sort of pigeonholed Bitcoin into that store of value category, because like he says, the BTC crowd has spent so much time and energy reinforcing this story that Bitcoin is like gold, and gold is clearly a store of value because nobody actually trades gold coins, you know, peer-to-peer to buy their coffee anymore. So he's sort of sidelined that, and he has, I don't know why it was the Bahamas that particularly got on his radar, but he's certainly found at least somewhere in the world that Bitcoin Cash has maintained that philosophy of being tradable peer-to-peer, and also the idea that he talks about, you know, further on in the talk, he mentions a little bit about the block size wars and all those things, like I was saying at the start of the episode about the history. And once people look into it a little bit, they uncover the story of Bitcoin Cash at some point, because I don't know, they read the white paper, or they, you know, hear about the block size wars, or they wonder about why hasn't Bitcoin completely taken over. And the answer is, it would have been if Bitcoin Cash had won, but it didn't, and so we're having to do it the hard way. And so what he's understood, in my opinion, because I know that Mark Cuban, I know when he got interested in cryptocurrency, it was a few months ago. He's probably been involved longer than that, but he was sort of coming out publicly and talking a lot about it. He went on the Bankless podcast and he was talking about Ethereum, and he was very, very excited about DeFi and these yields and new financial products and stuff. So obviously something there had clicked in him, that he'd seen the value. But now, a few months later, you know, 6 or 9 months later, we've seen represents a big increase in maturity of his understanding of cryptocurrency in that space and time, because now he's understood. I don't know, wouldn't be surprised if he'd gone back and he'd read the white paper, and just with more time to think it over, and maybe with some experiences seeing Dogecoin being paid for things and stuff like that, he's got to the point that it isn't about necessarily DeFi is nice, but ultimately the main game is about peer-to-peer, you know, consumer payments, and that this being a new form of money is going to be the huge fundamental change in the financial system, or at least set the groundwork for then all this other DeFi and all this other stuff. But the real thing that is going to convince people in meat space in the real world is seeing people scan and buy a hot dog in the halftime stands at a Mavs game. And he's got that idea. And so now that that's clicked for him, he's understood that the BTC crowd didn't make it over that jump. And the reason that they didn't is because they're still thinking in terms of a fiat to crypto economy. And he debates that with them, where he talks about, okay, you've got it going in El Salvador, but what about if it's denominated in USD? And then what if people need to cash out, and all these kind of things? And he sort of tries to explain to them, what about you need to get a crypto to crypto market going on, because BTC is not used for payments. It's not a medium of exchange. It's mostly a store of value. But with Bitcoin Cash, he doesn't talk about Bitcoin Cash specifically in that segment, but he's obviously thinking more of these payment coins like Dogecoin and like Bitcoin Cash, that if somebody can earn Bitcoin Cash and then spend Bitcoin Cash, or earn Dogecoin and then spend Dogecoin, or he talks about mining Bitcoin, if you can mine it and then earn and spend it in your own economy, then you've created a loop. You've created a separate economy. And it can't be just sort of this thing where people are buying Bitcoin, trading it a bit, but then cashing it out for USD. That's not a loop. That hasn't divorced and created a new economy. But he can see that obviously happening in Bitcoin Cash in the Bahamas or in other places. So this maturation of his understanding is now being broadcast exactly the same as SwizzBeatz to millions of people, because he already has a huge voice. He's very well known. And if he gets on this podcast and starts, you know, ruining them in a debate, any objective observers can listen to that and think, yeah, Mark is right. I don't know what these other guys are sort of talking about. And so then there was just sort of a bit of a section towards the end where Mark talks about the store of value versus the DeFi tokens, because he came into it through that way. He goes back to saying, look, there's got to be some intrinsic demand to create a self-sustaining economy. And that's where he likes the DeFi tokens, because he can see people are buying that for the application so they can actually use it. or like, he'll also get to the point of understanding, well, Bitcoin Cash, it's like that because people buy it so they can pay and actually use it. But the Bitcoin, if it's a store of value and that's all it is, I mean, really, we're at this point, we're just talking around the fact that it's turned into a Ponzi scheme, is everyone buys it hoping that their money will be worth more later. But that's not going to be enough in a world where paying with crypto becomes a regular and accepted thing. And yeah, Peter McCormack, he just has these sort of terrible arguments where he says, look, comparing crypto to Bitcoin is like comparing cars to bicycles, where in his mind and in the mind of all the other, BTC maxis, there's the one true Bitcoin and everything else is just irrelevant and doesn't match up. And there is a lot of key differences between Bitcoin and a lot of other cryptocurrencies, but they are all competing ultimately on a somewhat even playing field, right? So Bitcoin Cash is competing, and so is Dogecoin, and so is Ethereum, and so are all these other coins. And it's funny that when Bitcoin Cash gets brought up, his only instant little retort is it doesn't have the network effect. And that's a very dangerous place that the BTC community have now found themselves in, where their only argument against Bitcoin Cash, because a lot of the things they could argue against other coins might be like, well, it's not decentralized because their mining network is smaller. Well, that's not true for Bitcoin Cash because we have the same mining network, or we could have, if we grew into it, or that it's not that they have a strange monetary policy like Ethereum. Well, Bitcoin Cash doesn't have that, has the same monetary policy Ethereum. Well, it has a weird brand, like people trust Bitcoin. Well, Bitcoin Cash, people also can trust that because they trust Bitcoin. So but Bitcoin Cash, because it is kept staying in the discussion, it's now got to this point where the only argument against it is it's smaller. And that's not like an argument from first principles. That's like self-reinforcing. It's smaller because it's smaller, unless it grows, and then it's not smaller. Well, what then? It just takes over, right? If it has better properties. So, yeah, I don't know, Jett. What did you think of this?
Yeah, the two most common things I hear is, well, it's smaller and number hasn't gone up as much. Because at this point, right, where Bitcoin Cash was at like $300 for so long, and even in the fluctuations, like $300 is, I think, pretty damn close to the bottom. And it seems like whenever we get there, anyone in Bitcoin Cash stocks up. It's not like these people aren't making money anymore. Like maybe back when Coinbase first released Bitcoin Cash and it was like four grand or something, if you bought then, sure, you might still be out a couple bucks. But at this point, the BTC arguments of, well, it's smaller, does seem like it's self-feeding, because I mean, we've talked about this before where it seems like we'll just barrel down, like test all your different cryptocurrencies out, like give them a shot. The more you use them, the more I feel we're going to get users with Bitcoin Cash because of how simple and easy it is. And then, yeah, like number sure isn't 54,000, but you could easily have made 100% in Bitcoin Cash over the past year and a half. You could not do that with BTC if I'm remembering things correctly. I don't know. I know we did go down for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin Cash had an absolutely horrific run after it was launched on initially, and because it was the first ever fork of Bitcoin, not the first ever cryptocurrency fork, interestingly enough. Like Ethereum Classic was earlier, but at the time it was much more traumatic thing for the whole cryptocurrency scene. And because it was that first fork, the exchanges didn't know how to coordinate it. Nobody knew what would happen. Nobody knew if the fork would survive successfully, or if it would get attacked by the miners, or if it would be completely, everyone would flood into it and it would completely take over. There was so many unknown variables, and it had a very rough time as it happened, with starting off with quite a lot of a lower price, getting launched on Coinbase and getting loads of hype, but then getting dumped off by all the people that wanted to just see it die and go away. And it went from $3,000 down to $80. Like, it's like the pinnacle of death, you know, just the same as when Bitcoin, you know, the original OG Bitcoin went from, in 2011, I think it went from $32 down to $2, right? And the whole world wrote it off. It's gone. That's it. You know, once it's gone from $32 to $2, surely it's going all the way to zero, right? But the point is that it's not a linear thing, right? The lower the price goes, the more the hardcore can sort of sustain its price, right? The less people it needs, still just buying a couple bucks every couple weeks for the price to flatten out. And then if those people keep doing that, slowly the ship turns around, and that's what's happened. And so it was down as low as $80, and then it has been in this sort of range of like between $200 to $400, $500, $600 for all that time. BSV got forked off, and that didn't completely wreck everything. And then eCash recently forked off, and the price started rising up a bit. And so the community has survived those things. And there was a lot of BTC holders who could dump all their Bitcoin Cash and celebrate, oh, we got rid of these fake Bitcoins, I cashed it in for real Bitcoins, hooray for me. And there was also a lot of people who were bought in those early days. Hey, what?
I just checked the numbers. BCH year to date, 107.7%. BTC year to date, 105.66%. So BCH is outperforming BTC year to date. Right
even at this exact moment, where in the last
moment, yes.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying that because in the last 2 weeks, BCH has actually struggled against BTC. Yeah. BTC has surged, like we were up at whatever it was, 60 or 70 to 1, and now it's closer to 100 to 1, right? Yeah. So even with that recent drop off, BCH is still outperforming BTC on a 1 year time. That's super interesting.
By 2%.
Super interesting.
Which in crypto isn't much, but in normal stocks, like that's enough to change your stocks right there, right?
Yeah, that's definitely definitely in crypto that's small potatoes, right?
And
and
assuming like the patterns historically, like every time there's this bull run, BCH is the last to pump, and then when it does pump, like it's like I'm not gonna really like pump the pump, you know what I mean? But like, it'll be a ride, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, I think what the BTC crowd don't understand, but which maybe the market generally, and a lot of smart, you know, high profile, bigger people like Mark Cuban, SwizzBeatz, or even like Elon Musk, they all take a very serious, even PayPal, Venmo, all these places, because they have people who do the research, they understand that BCH can come from nowhere very, very, very fucking fast, because the only thing that it's lacking is sort of the impetus from all the like random speculators and whatever. It's got everything else there. It's got a solid mining network. It's got a ton of solid devs. It's got a community that isn't going to let it die. It's got now DeFi with Smart BCH. It's got, you know, the brand recognition that people know Bitcoin Cash, or they know Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, whatever, much of a muchness, right? Close enough. Like, it's got all of these things. And if once it starts to run, it can just run away, you know, very quickly. And I've said this before on the show, I'm going to keep saying it until it happens, which it will eventually, is there will just be a tipping point at which Bitcoin Cash just becomes... But is it Bitcoin Cash though? Were they right the whole time? Is this going to just take over? And as soon as that narrative becomes a little bit self-perpetuating, there'll be no stopping it. And it's the hard work of getting ground adoption that convinces people more than any amount of arguing on Twitter. And the BTC crowd have just done, you know, they've just done everything wrong. Even though their price has gone up and they feel jubilant, they're still so insecure about their own position against the crypto market as a whole, but also against Bitcoin Cash. Because when Mark debates them or something like that, you can even hear in that clip, he says, like, stop changing the subject. Like, let's go back to that first point you made. And if you listen to the whole hour and 40 minutes, he does that about 10 times, because the whole game is that they will say something and he'll have a counter argument, and then they'll just sort of try and dismiss it off quickly and then say, but to move on to this next thing, they don't, if as soon as it becomes call and response, once you get into the weeds a little bit, the cracks in BTC just start creeping up to the surface of the discussion. And the BTC community have, become ever more toxic and insular amongst themselves, confirming to each other that they are the big dogs in the scene. But the actual brain drain of people and talent in the scene has mostly, for the most part, left BTC. And then on top of that, now you have there being attacks from both angles, from below and then also from above, where people like Elon or Mark Cuban, who are bigger than Bitcoin and who have more reach and also have no implicit bias or need for money or whatever, start looking into it and thinking, okay, let me just do my own independent analysis. And very often they can see Andre Jick, who he's not in the same league as those other two, but people coming and doing their own independent analysis with a pre-established platform, they always see there's something going on here, something special in Bitcoin Cash. So yeah, I guess really that's all I wanted to say about that clip. But I do recommend everybody listen to the full thing if you haven't. It's very enlightening, and I don't know, shows a lot about the BTC state of affairs. And Mark Cuban has a lot of great points, so definitely an interesting listen.
Before we move on, I want to entertain a thought for a moment. So I remember all this talk about the flippening, and I was exhausted by it. Even in the BCH camp, I was like, I've got a flippening shirt.
Because I got to get one of those shirts.
I don't know. I don't think they get made anymore, but
I'll make them.
But I think it'll be really interesting, and it'll be like okay. So assuming Bitcoin Cash gets this adoption and this narrative, and we do get those speculators, then the BTC crowd that have been here through the flippening narrative originally that failed, they're not going to believe a new one. They're going to be like, oh, it's still a shitcoin. Watch this dump. And then how long would it take Bitcoin Cash to sustain its value or surpass BTC for them to be like how powerful is that cognitive dissonance in this kind of situation? How long would it take someone to be like, oh, maybe I was wrong? And how much will the sunken cost fallacy prevent people from trying to make that switch? And I'm sure we can apply that to any crypto crowd. I'm sure people will say the same about BCHers, so I don't really want to direct it at any one group of people. But I think we see that already with what I would consider failing coins.
Yeah, and we are going to. This is exactly what this conversation here represents. Is that why they called it Mark Cuban versus Bitcoin? Why did they do that? That was the stupidest thing. They should be thinking Mark Cuban meets Bitcoin. They should be wanting to be there, chatting to Mark, getting him on side, explaining to him all their arguments and all that. But they come into it with an adversarial mindset that it's going to be us versus them. And Bitcoin and even Bitcoin Cash, and even cryptocurrency as a whole does have an element of that, because it's goes back to my analogy about the Spartans. It has to be resistant to overwhelming disapproval from everyone outside the community. That's the only way that it's succeeded to the extent that it has. But the BTC crowd have taken that way too far, way off the edge of the cliff, where they're set to fight against anybody who they'll go out, they'll pick a fight with them. They won't even try and bring them on board. So there's even somebody who could help them.
There's a meme of a man who may be mentally ill. I'm not sure. He goes to a public park and he sits down next to this group of teenagers that are having a picnic, and he just starts asking them all this shit about COVID, and they're like, "Can you go away? We're just trying to eat." And he's like, "Well, I have a right to be here." And I feel like that's gonna be Bitcoiners. They're just going up to kids having a picnic and being like, "Hey, you're wrong."
The world's moved past them. That's the thing. They don't understand that either too, because the price is the last thing that will indicate this. Is that is that the conversation has moved, skate where the puck is going, right? What are people thinking about? Like SwizzBeatz was talking about, what is he thinking about in 3 years' time? He's not thinking about Bitcoin BTC in 3 years' time. He's thinking about Bitcoin Cash in 3 years' time. And just that narrative, it's just this ineffable thing, which you can't control it anywhere. But once the critical mass has moved, it's too late. Once Elon comes out and says, all right, Bitcoin Cash is the better Bitcoin, that's too late. The time to be figuring this out, and they can't see the warning signs are going off everywhere. Their market dominance is constantly declining. There's more and more altcoins. I mean, there's always going to be more of them, people making hundreds of coins, but I'm talking about coins that have real communities, that have a lot of people backing them, that have a lot of money, that a lot of people are interested in, that that there's a lot of excitement around. It's not even just Bitcoin and Ethereum. Well, I don't even like a lot of these coins, but there's there's Solana, and there's Avalanche, and there's Dogecoin, and there's whatever. There's if you filter out, okay, Tether, stable coins, Binance, USD, or Shiba Inu, or whatever, like just pump and dumps. Even if you filter it down to some actual kind of real projects, there's still a few things really starting to get in the mix that have legs of their own. BCH obviously being one of the longest standing members of that collective. And as those things just build up more and more momentum, what the BTC crowd don't see is they see that they're on top now, but they don't see all the people that aren't joining. Like, other communities are growing and they're attracting more people, and those people are just skipping straight past BTC, or kind of passing through and ending up in another community, like the Ethereum community, or like the Bitcoin Cash community, or like the Dogecoin community, because they look into BTC and it doesn't interest them, it doesn't serve their needs, and it's just toxic and negative, and it's it's all or nothing. Like, if you're not all in BTC, well, you're a shitcoiner who likes scams, like Mark Cuban. But of course, Mark Cuban is not going to respond to that. And how would you call Mark Cuban a scammer? He's a well-known billionaire. He has no need of money. He's not out trying to make a quick $100. He's probably richer than everyone on that call he was with combined by like 10x. It just doesn't make any sense. But that's where they're in, and they're not going to see the wind has shifted until they're already plummeting off the cliff. And like we saw, Peter McCormack, his only argument is Bitcoin Cash doesn't have the network effect. So if that's gone, if something else starts to have a network effect, what then? There's no way back. There's no way back. All right. I guess that that'll wrap up that topic. So onwards to the last couple of things. Mark Cuban, love you, man. Anytime you want to come on the show, very welcome to. I'll tag you in the Twitter post too. All right. So meme of the week this week is very appropriately themed with what we were just talking about. It is the meme of the guy with his girlfriend who's annoyed because he's turned around to look at another girl who's just walked past him. Is one of my favorite meme formats. I just always find it funny. But in this one, the guy's face, they've photoshopped Mark Cuban's head onto that, and then the girlfriend who's being scorned is Bitcoin, and the girl in the red dress who is more attractive is Bitcoin Cash. So Mark's just turning away from Bitcoin and being like, Bitcoin Cash. And that's the exact this exact meme format was like the same one I did a few ages ago, where I did it with Bitcoin Cash was the girl in red, but it was, and the Mark Cuban figure, it was just like the transactions, right? Slowly people are like, well, why would I pay $5 for a transaction when I could pay 0.001 on BCH and just moving over? And that's just the state of the world, is everybody kind of moving over like that. So that one made me laugh. So good job to /u/BTCXIO on Reddit. Great memery there. And then community comment of the week, shout out by the way to Roadie Gaming, first one to comment in the Twitch chat. So it seems like the stream's working. Right, so community comment of the week, all very on theme with what we're saying, which is today from Colin Talks Crypto, who I did explain at the start of the show. He did get it right that you know, a few months ago, we were not going to be in a bear market. We were still in a bull market, but it remains to be seen if we're going to see a huge explosion in crypto or not. But unrelated to any of that, he posted in the subreddit today, and he said, recipe for success. In the crypto space, it is often the nature of the community of an underdog blockchain to attack an incumbent blockchain, but it's not the recipe for success. Rather than relying on the failure points of another blockchain, in brackets, BTC and ETH, for example, close brackets, for the success of your own favorite chain, work on making your own chain so good that it is the natural free market winner. This includes great public perception, promotion, and technology. In the case of competing technology from an underdog blockchain, it can't be just be a bit better or even 2x better. It must be an order of magnitude better for incumbent participants to switch in any meaningful way. And it must be well received in the public eye. This means good marketing and promotion. So he made this post, and I 100% agree with it. This is spot on, you know, nail on the head, which is that obviously, like we've seen, you know, Bitcoin, to attract people out of the US dollar, it can't just be twice as good. It has to be 10x as good, and it is 10x as good. And so for BCH, I think he mentioned maybe in some posts on Twitter that he said in similar things, this is sort of the BCH and EOS communities, both of which he sort of likes and is involved in. This is sort of seems to be what he was targeting this message to. And he's right. For BCH to start out punching Bitcoin, it needs to be orders of magnitude better. And the funny thing is that we actually already are in the sense of on-chain transaction fees, a very critical metric. BCH is 0.001 and BTC is like, you know, $2 minimum. So we are already a couple of orders of magnitude better in terms of on-chain transaction. But there is a lot of things that we're all also better on scaling. Like BCH's potential to scale another 10x or 100x is much higher, much better established and studied than for BTC, which is going to have a lot of problems with the Lightning Network trying to do that, or custodial services, which defeats the point. But obviously BCH overall is not magnitudes better than BTC yet, partly because of the branding and also partly because they have a majority of the hash rate and the liquidity. So the BCH community does need to you know, fix those things, but those things will get fixed naturally in time. The way we're going to do that is by starting to focus internally, and like Colin is saying, just make a better technology. Just prove to the free market that this is the coin providing what people want, and we are starting to do that. So I wrote a response in the thread, but the summary of it was that we already have fees an order of magnitude lower. But you can see that in the last year, the BCH community has stopped going back to those arguments of 2017 or, you know, we are the real Bitcoin. We're still going to have that. It's still important to keep that in mind. But the way to win is to just start putting up numbers that cannot be denied in terms of forward progress. And that's what's happened with Smart BCH. For instance, BTC is miles away from having a EVM compatible smart chain integration. In fact, I would hesitate to guess that they probably never ever will, but we've already got that and it's starting to run. Okay, there's a centralized bridge right now, but I'm sure that will get sorted out over time. And I also said noise.cash and read.cash, other great examples, like that kind of micro tipping site building its own social networks with its own community and everything. It's just, you know, amazing. Like BTC is miles away from that because they're already too comfortable. They've got Reddit where they can ban everyone off the R Bitcoin subreddit and the R cryptocurrency subreddit if they want. And they've got Twitter where they have their little crypto Twitter bubble. They don't need to be, you know, innovating on any of these fronts, but BCH is. And I think the community, I'm going to tie this into message to the community as well, because this week it's me. So Roadie Gaming from noise.cash. There you go. Owen Lars 12. OWENLARS 12. Everybody go and follow Owen Lars 12 on noise.cash. Watches this show. Great commenter. Anyway, the point is that the BCH community has started hitting back. We're starting to focus on us, not on BTC. And I've talked about this on several episodes of the show, and I think that evidence is just snowballing in that direction. that now the BCH community is not focused on being better than BTC. It's focused on making BCH amazing. And that's a critical switch, which is going to take the coin a long way. But those things take time. Those wheels take time to start snowballing in that direction. But it is happening, and I think the community, exactly like Colin Crypto is talking about, should pay mind to that. Let's not worry so much about what BTC is doing, or whether or not whatever their stupid arguments are. Just forget about that. They're self-imploding anyway, by just getting into these debates with people that are bigger and smarter than them, like Mark Cuban, and at some point Elon's going to come out once he's launched a few more rockets and just wreck a few of them, like he was already sort of starting to do. So we don't need to really bother about that. Just leave them to it. But for us, we just got to focus on spreading education about cryptocurrency. How does it work? And giving people a hand to try out Bitcoin Cash and to use it. And if we can do that, it'll just become an unstoppable force at some point. It won't come from any one thing necessarily, but it'll just be the critical tipping point at which the whole market realizes Bitcoin Cash is where it's at. So I can see a lot of great signs for that. 2021 has been a pretty good year, and I think in hindsight, a lot has changed. A lot has helped in the community, and we'll see. That should only accelerate in 2022. So yeah, that pretty much will do it for me for the week. I don't know, Jett, did you want to make any sort of final comments about any of this?
Not really. Sorry, I'm like going blinded by this on here. No, I feel like, I mean, I still think there's a little bit of disillusionment, but maybe that's more because my crypto circle is more of like the older folks. I feel like they've been in it definitely quite a bit longer than I have. But most of my like real life circle is like they're not into crypto at all, and so I don't know. It's weird for me to have like my frame of reference when it comes to crypto is like mostly what I read online, but then I it meets the real world, right? And it's like, yeah, there's still so much to do, and a long way to go, and it's high time that everyone just doubles down and starts doing what we're doing. You like the coin? Do something for the coin.
We like the coin. Maybe we should start that as our unofficial like motto or something, like Bitcoin Cash, we like the coin. maybe that could be something. But yeah, it is true. If BCH, the only thing it's lacking is momentum, and that's something that people have a very hard time understanding, because momentum is quite an ineffable thing. But once you've got the momentum, you get a lot of momentum, and when you don't have it, it's almost impossible to get, right? So
I've got to like call the arms then. All right, let's start. Let's berate TikTok, because the algorithm on that is absolutely wild. And all it takes is one person getting on the For You page where they're like, hey, this is me paying for a dumpling with Bitcoin Cash. And all of a sudden you have, tens of thousands of viewers that would not normally be exposed to that. And there's so many working people. I was so surprised by this. There are so many blue-collar, hardworking, rural people on TikTok. And having that, hey, this is how easy it is for everyone on a platform that's already easy for everyone would be, I think, a lot more persuasive than nerds like me trying to go up to a merchant and being like, hey, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
if anyone in the Bitcoin Cash space is on TikTok, reach out and let's coordinate some shit. Like duets and stitches and all that shit. Like that's how you get there.
Yeah, I don't know anything about TikTok really, but I want to give a shout out here to Daisy Fabria. Everyone can follow on Twitter at Daisy Fabria, but also she's on TikTok, tiktok.com/@Daisy, DAISY _Fabria, FABRIA. And recently I've been seeing her. She's into BCH and Noise.cash and all that stuff. And she has been doing TikToks, and I think that is freaking killer. So I am I do think that like the podcast maybe needs to make some TikToks or whatever. I haven't had time
Take
to
some
look into
clips.
it and figure it all out, like how to, I don't know, game the algorithm or make it go viral or whatever. But I will need to look into that, because it is just pretty foreign to me at this exact moment in time. But I think you're right. We just need some new angle, some new way in there. Can I say the username again? I'll put it in chat. Yes, I will. It's Daisy Fabria, DAISY.
Hold on. Let me put it in chat.
I'll do that as well.
DA
For the ISY _ Fabria, FABRIA. And we'll put it in the show notes and stuff for people who, that's it, who watch the show on Twitter and on TikTok. So that's the kind of thing we need to be doing. So if anybody can help her out or has a similar idea or whatever,
if we get enough people doing TikToks, let's do a TikTok of the week kind of thing. Same thing.
TikTok of the week. Yeah, that's a good idea actually. All right. Well, a lot of stuff we need to investigate there on TikTok. But yeah, just some kind of viral magic, and BCH with the momentum will just kick off. So yeah, anyway, that will do it for the show. That was first episode stream live. I have enjoyed having the comments here and stuff while we're going along. I don't know that we're going to make it too much into like viewers just chipping in halfway through or whatever, but because it's the first time doing it, I did want to sort of highlight that. It seems like a bit of a success, so maybe we can try that again next week. So as always, the viewers can donate at the BCH QR codes that's on the slides and on the show. Brody Gaming says, Jeremy, give Jett a big screen space. Well, listen, man,
I control the screen space.
He can have it. Yeah. He's in charge of the screen space. So if he wants to put himself, it's 100% of the screen. He can do that. So
hold on,
he's choosing to be
what's up, bro?
Anonymous. But yeah, don't worry. There's no dictatorship over the screen space coming from me. So. Yeah. Anyway, shout out to all the donators. Thank you very much. It really helps running the show, and I do appreciate it. Then also people can check out BitcoinCashPodcast.com. It's now will boost the Google Analytics, and the FAQs and all that stuff is linked there as well. You can follow the show. If you go there, all the links are in the bottom, but on Telegram, on Twitter, on Twitch now, on YouTube, on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, like Spotify, whatever, just look it up and get it. And if we don't have it, then send me a message and I'll start trying to distribute. I do want to actually distribute the show on Library as well, on Odyssey. Haven't got around to that, just had way too many things, but that's in the back of my mind as well. I don't know. A lot of different things, but anyway, the point is you can get the podcast wherever you want, hopefully. And Bitcoin Cash doing pretty great. Shout out for this week is, I'm going to reiterate here, my Aunt Mary, absolute legend, and getting involved in BCH and in cryptocurrency. So welcome aboard, and I know she listens to the show, so hopefully she will hear this. Jett, any shout outs, or we'll wrap it up?
Ooh, shout outs. Nah, to be honest. Although, last quick little thing. I know I've posted about this in a couple Telegram groups and on Twitter. We're trying to get some kind of discussion episode going of just a group of, if you're heavily involved in cryptocurrency, if you're a miner, a developer, a skeptic, a no-coiner, if you hate, if you think it's killing the environment, we just want to get a bunch of people together. And like, I would love to pick people's brains. And for the most part, my crypto circle, that was a great voice crack. Shout out to that voice crack. For the most part, my crypto circle has been, like I said, a lot of older folks that have been around for a long time. And I want to hear some new voices. And I think we're facing different challenges today than we were 3 years ago, and I kind of want to know what they are, because I think I'm too in the weeds even at this point. So to get, I just want to like freshen up what the social consensus of specifically Bitcoin Cash, but crypto in general is. And so if that's interesting to you at all, then open invite. We do have a couple people that have already expressed their interest. But yeah.
So maybe a bit of a group episode coming soon. Obviously, the more people you have, the higher the coordination barrier becomes. So no promises that that's going to be like the very next episode or anything, but yeah, we do have it in the pipeline. So hopefully we can mix it up with the one where we cut out, maybe some of the news and some of the other like set topics or whatever, and we just have a bit more of an open forum.
Or maybe even it's an after show kind of thing. Like we'll figure it out.
Yeah. We'll be trying something. But thank you everybody for listening. Hope you enjoyed, and until next time.
While the rich banks rob ya,
Robbing blind man.
future dollars can buy nothing for